Hey everyone, it is Mica, and I'm back with more Pantheon Rise of the Fallen, where I'm talking about the classes that are going to be included at launch. And today I'm continuing with the tanks and going to jump into the Dire Lord. Now, before I begin, I want to reiterate that I'm using the skills and the abilities that are listed on the official site, which is likely not a complete list of what we will have at launch. And since the game is still in development, everything, of course, is still subject to change. But as of right now, this is the current information we have, so let's just get right on into the Dire Lord. And direct from the official site, we first learn the Dire Lord is considered a myth by most. In the oral tradition of Terminus' history, there are legends that speak of Dire Lords capable of mastering the crippling power of fear, with some able to manipulate the very essence of their enemies. The Dire Lord is a proficient combatant that is known for their swift and brutal melee attacks and their relentless self-healing. But while battling their enemies in a corporal sense, Dire Lords are also waging war in the imagination of their foe. By infiltrating the essence of a being, the Dire Lord can ravage their enemy with horrifying phantoms, alter the properties of their essence, and even steal their essence completely. By mastering essence manipulation, the Dire Lord is able to wield their own blood in battle, using it to replenish themselves or to assail their enemies from the inside out. Now that is a really interesting description, and also potentially really messy. I mean, these dudes wield their own blood. Imagine living with one of them. I mean, after every little spat and every little disagreement, you're gonna be cleaning the Dire Lord out of your carpet again. But humans, Darkmere, Ogre, and Scar are able to embrace their dire side and fill the tank position in the group. They only have one listed resource, and that's simply called Essence, which is gained by both dealing and taking damage. Dire Lords are a little bit more versatile when it comes to gear compared to, say, Paladin, being able to equip cloth, leather, and mail, but they are limited to one- and two-handed edged weapons. And most likely, Dire Lords will tend to lean toward one of these, since single-handed weapons give a higher crit chance, but two-handed weapons give a higher crit damage. So I assume whichever is most effective in battle is gonna win out for the majority. Much like the Paladin, the Dire Lord has very few passive abilities listed. The first being Relentless Vitality, which ironically for a tank will actually lower your overall health as your natural regen becomes stronger. Now, before I go on, you will notice something very interesting about the Dire Lord, and that is that the Dire Lord is more of a self-heal type tank, like they said in the description. Not only do they seem to have a large natural regen to compensate for their smaller health pool, but they also have a lot of self-heals, and in my mind that kind of makes them seem like they might be better at off-tanking, since they may not be able to take as large of a hit, but they can keep themselves alive to allow the healer to maybe raise the main tank if they go down, or just be a great tank if the healer goes down. Possibly even a half-decent soloish class, which I honestly thought they were trying to avoid, but we'll see how it plays out. Sanguine Cloak is another passive ability that makes you more resistant to magical attacks. Terrormancer, it will make fear effects last only half as long as they normally would. And finally, Dark Revenge will cause you to absorb a certain percentage of the damage you deal as a heal on the strike you land immediately after being critically hit. So, to organize that, if you get hit critically, then the next time you swing your sword and hit that mob, you're gonna absorb part of that damage as a heal. Dire Lords also have their own stances, which from a lore perspective changes the properties of their blood to cause these effects, which in my perspective is just creepy and sounds incredibly painful. Just ugh. The first of these stances is called Nightmare Blood, which inflicts your enemy with a palpable horror and converts part of the damage you inflict into enmity. Then we have Torrential Veins, which causes your blood to flow faster, increasing your natural regen and also increasing your essence gains. The last one here is called Essence Leech, and with this one, every critical hit you land will also heal you for a certain percentage of the damage you deal. So if you have this going on top of Dark Revenge, you are going to be healing every time you take or deal critical damage. Now, the rest of the Dire Lord's abilities I'm going to split between not only how they are used in battle, but also if they will require essence. And I'm going to start with the ones that will be directly related to tanking and debuffing, and then end with damage related skills. First, we have Provoking Phantoms, which is a skill that will deepen the fear and anger of you and whatever you're fighting the longer you focus on it, which basically sounds like your enmity will slowly build on a target the longer you're focused on the target, making it really, really great for single target battles. Now, it does not say if you lose enmity, if you switch to use an ability on another target before moving back, or if you use an AoE ability, or if you use something with a splash effect. But for fights with only a single target, this will be incredibly good for your enmity build, and also pretty much it when it comes to enmity building outside of the Nightmare Blood state. But there are also skills that will enhance both you and your party's defense. For instance, Diamark will be an ability that you can use on a party member that will redirect a portion of the damage they take to you, making it very handy for times when maybe the healer gets hate and you can't rip it off them, or even to help mitigate a tank buster on the main tank if the Dire Lord is off tanking. Canopy of Blood will sacrifice 25% of your health and use essence to create a magic shield around you for a short time that will also cover any team members that are close enough. And if you just need a magic shield for yourself, you can use Sanguine Shield, which will instead form a shield of your own blood that is magic resistant in front of you for 2 seconds. And this shield also has a slight chance of completely nullifying that magic. And it also comes without the health cost. Debuffs seem to be another aspect of Dire Lord that are very interesting and may be quite useful. They have one called Essence Thief that will swap a Dire Lord's depleted essence with that of an enemy's, filling the Dire Lord's essence gauge to full while switching their physical location with whatever they cast it on. Now, the shock of this location change will also affect the enemy in different ways, but what those ways are, they do not elaborate on, but it will depend on their type. So animals, insects, humanoids, etc., they're all going to be affected differently by this ability. Baleful Suffering will cause an enemy to freeze and become unable to move, which also means they will be unable to dodge, to block, or to resist your next move, which when executed will also fill your essence gauge to the max. Now, if you want to use some essence, you can use Grip of Torment, which will nullify all heals for the target, and honestly is going to be really, really great if you're fighting another Dire Lord. There's also Blood Fiend, which will inflict any poison or disease status you're currently suffering from onto your target. And at least it's good to know that Dire Lords understand the old adage that sharing is caring. Lead in Blood will thicken their blood, making them unable to move, aka your standard heavy spell, which is always good when you need to run. And Deafening Whisper will silence your target. Finally, we come to the damage inflicting part of Dire Lord, and each of these abilities will either grant you or cost you essence, with one exception, and that being Harm Shield, which will redirect any physical damage you take to any enemies within 6 meters of you. Again with the Dire Lord and their sharing. Now, there are 2 abilities that will grant essence while applying debuffs on top of the damage they cause, and the first of these is Thresh, which is an attack that will inflict a bleed effect, causing damage over time. Likely one that will be good to always have applied. And then we have Sanguine Blade, the mage's best friend, which will make the mob more susceptible to magic while draining a small portion of their mana. The last DD abilities and the final abilities I have to cover will cost you essence. Now, the first one of these is Abyssal Strike, which just is pure power. This is straight up damage that ignores armor class. I mean, this is your power move. The second one is Edge of Midnight, which will buff you by stealing your magical effect from your enemy and granting it to you. Now, it doesn't say it, but I mean, it's pretty safe to assume that this is a beneficial effect that it will steal and give to you. And then finally, we have Splatter, which will cause the essence of your enemy to literally splatter around them and has the possibility of transferring any debuffs to anything it hits. Something that will be of great help when, and not if, but when you get overrun with enemies in a cave somewhere. And that's it for the Dire Lord's abilities. I really wonder how they're going to balance this class, because between having an enhanced natural regen and the ability to heal when they deal or even when they sometimes take damage, it really confuses me about how battle with a Dire Lord is going to play out. Like I stated previously, it sounds like Dire Lord would be a great off-tank or possibly even a solo job, but it really depends on how small their health pool is and how high that natural regen is, both in and out of combat. Not to mention, there are very few enmity building skills listed for a tank, especially when it comes to burst or AoE enmity. So I'm a little perplexed on how this class will work exactly. I mean, there are good people behind this game that know what they're doing, but between not being a tank player, and also since it's likely that we don't have a full list of abilities, it may just make less sense on paper than it does when we actually see it in game. But if you like a tank that juggles debuffs and is a big ol' bloody mess, I would say give Dire Lord a try. Next, I will tackle the final tank, the Warrior, before moving on to the healers. I am trying to get these class videos out to you at a decent pace. However, this week I am going to be a little bit busy with Final Fantasy XIV's new expansion and getting things ready for, like I mentioned before, a little bit of streaming. I also have a few other things in mind I would like to make happen if I possibly can. I'd also like to start doing a little bit of collaboration and getting a little bit of social and getting myself out there a little bit more. So hopefully that's all going to happen at some point. And if you want to keep up with how things are going, or just chat a bit, or if you maybe want to do a little bit of collaboration, my social media is linked below. Pantheon site is also linked below if you want to learn more or pledge. But as per the usual, it has been a hoot, and until next time, have fun.